In the mid to late 80s, Lima brought us the Mk3a coach in Scotrail blue stripe livery. 30 years later, Oxford Rail have now brought us the latest incarnation of this coach. In this video I'll be looking at all three variations from Oxford Rail and comparing them to the original Lima version. I'll also be looking at them in conjunction with the Backman stock for which they're designed to run, and passing judgment on that. Hope you find it useful. Any questions and any comments, please do get in touch. I'm going to look at the standard open coach first, because this is going to be the most commonly purchased one and most numerous on people's layouts. I reviewed the Mk3a from Oxford in 2018, the link to that video is at the top of the screen, and I still have the same opinion about the overall design and shape from the Oxford product. I still feel that the roof ribs are too subtle and need to be more pronounced. The grab rails on the roof are a bit over scale and have not quite captured the shape of the Mk3a door correctly. One thing I did point out in my review in 2018 was the failure of Oxford to really nail the colour of the lower side of the coach. It was too grey, too cold and not beige enough. Unfortunately, they've not addressed this issue with the latest release from the Scotrail range. It's still too cold and grey, and whilst in isolation it looks absolutely beautiful, it's not got the warmth that I would have wanted. If you go on to the British Standards colour, I believe this is BS 381366, and its official name from BR was light beige. Now what Oxford have done is they've done the research and they've used this colour, but when you scale something down, it affects the appearance of something. So by using the exact British Standards colour on a scaled coach, it hasn't worked. You have to alter it somewhat when you scale, and that's what Oxford have really omitted to do. And they face heavy criticism from us modellers and collectors regarding this with their swallow livery, but they've pressed ahead with the same colour and stuck to their guns, and they've produced a lovely coach, but the colour at the bottom isn't right. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, just respray it. We shouldn't have to do that to a new coach, to be perfectly honest. However, back to the positives. This little detail here on the lower side of the toilet window is superb. It shows the Scotrail Express route map, and if you get a magnifying glass, you can actually pick out the words. So big thumbs up for me there for Oxford's efforts. This is the Composite Coach. They were originally fully first open coaches, but the demand for a full first open coach wasn't there on the routes that the train was running, and there was more demand for standard seating, so they converted it into a composite. It's very neatly done. As with the standard coach, decoration throughout is superb quality. The nice touch here is that they've actually used the correct colour of interior seating as well. The first open side is a kind of orangey colour, while the standard one is blue. Another thing that I'll pick out here that Oxford have listened to constructive feedback is that they've put in silver window frames to give it that kind of aluminium strip around the glass appearance. And this is actually part of the glazing, so that's very neatly done. There's no hazing, no bleeding at all on this, so you know, the guy who does quality control at the Oxford facility really deserves a pay rise, because not one of the coaches that took out the boxes had any flaws on them whatsoever. I only feel other companies could really learn from Oxford's lead with regard to the quality of product. The final variation is the first open coach. These were used on routes where the demand was higher, such as Glasgow to Inverness, Aberdeen to Edinburgh. So they weren't just composite coaches, they were full length first opens. As with the other two, decoration is flawless. Actually, maybe it's just me under the light, but I feel the yellow stripe here is slightly richer than the yellow stripe on the composite, but I think that just may be the lighting. Typeface on all three coaches is spot on, as are positions of door numbers, such as the first class there. All coach numbers are accurate to those who actually wore that particular livery. which is not always, it seems a simple thing to get right, but it's not always the case with manufacturers. They sometimes pick coaches that never actually wore that specific livery. We've now got a good comparison of the liveries, and you'll see that the lower side, as I mentioned, is unfortunately the same shade. If you look at the two in comparison, the one on the left is the original Lima, the one on the right obviously the new Oxford. It just shows how far we've come in 30 years regarding manufacturing processes, finesse and detail. The Oxford coach is leaps and bounds ahead of it with regard to quality, fit finish and just, you know, overall design. In the Lima's defence, it's been a great coach for 30 years. I'll still have them on my layout. They've lasted the test of time. The detail's not there, which you can expect for something that was made in the 80s. You know, it's not got flush glazing, but you can improve that if you wanted. The aluminium rim is a bit pronounced, shall we say, around the windows, and it just lacks that kind of finesse. However, what I will say is the colour is closer on the lower side than the modern version, so we might learn something in 30 years, but we don't learn everything. The couplers are vastly improved on the new ones compared to the big Lima couplers. However, what I've found is that the couplers on the Oxford, which are attached to the bottom of the coach in a cam system, don't like to be pushed as much as the big couplers from Hornby and Lima. So, you know, I've had some where the couplers actually dropped out of the cam and dragged along the top of the sleeper, so just watch that. Not happened to every coach, but just the odd one. One thing I'll say that Lima got better is this painted finish above the cantrail stripe was actually a feature of the Scotrail Mk3s, which doesn't appear on the Oxford Mk3s. So, you know, if you look at different photos, you get different variations of the coaches as they were painted, but there was a lot of them which had the paint up to the first rib on the roof with the cantrail stripe in the middle. Okay, I think you all knew where this review was going and heading towards the moment where I was going to compare the Bachmann Mk3a DBSO with the Oxford Mk3. Let's just quickly get it out of the way. They didn't match, which is a great disappointment for me, having waited, you could say I waited 30 years for it, but in essence I waited 7 years to get myself a new rake of Scotrails and a DBSO, and it's a disappointment to me that they don't match. The Bachmann one is far closer to the accurate colour. This is more accurate on the stripe bandle on the windows. This is almost black, and that's too cold. But in one positive, the blue and white stripe colours, they're pretty close. Now, Oxford knew when they released this Mk3 in Scotrail livery, or they announced it was going to run with Bachmann products. It was going to run with 47.7s in Scotrail livery, and it was going to run with the DBSO, which was announced long before the Oxford coach was. So, to then ask the customer whether they wanted accurate colours or ask them to match Bachmann or Hornby was their first error. They should have the courage in their design to go ahead, because if you ask people who don't know what the right answer is, you're not going to get a successful outcome. Of course everyone wants accurate colours, but are you going to get that by going ahead on your own and not looking at what else is on the market that's going to run with your coaches? I feel the sales of the Oxford have probably been harmed as a result of them not colour matching Bachmann. If you take Hornby out of the equation here for a moment, it's usually going to be Bachmann rolling stock that's going to run with. Now, if Oxford look to do the HST Mk3s, they're going to have to colour match something. Something's going to have to give, because they're not going to look right with Hornby HSTs. They're just not. Now, some people might want to put up with that, weather it, accept that, and some people are not going to put up with that. So, really from the offset, the question there asking consumers what they would want it to do with regard to colour was, I'd say, a needless move. They should have gone ahead and just matched one of the other manufacturers. Sales of this Oxford Mark III would have just soared through the roof. The Swallow one as well, because you could have run it with some Mark IIFs, you could run it with the full brake red stripe from Bachmann, you could run it with the red stripe rolling stock and locomotives from Hornby and Bachmann. But unfortunately, by going a third way, you've got a third variation. We wait long enough for products, so when we do get them, we expect them to be spot on. And whilst everything about the Oxford Coach is absolutely beautiful, I feel that they've let themselves down a little bit with sticking to their guns with this colour. They could have done a separate colour for the Scotrail coaches from the Intercity Swallows. They very rarely ran together, so they could have changed course with regard to this, but didn't. Final thing I'll say is the couplings. I would recommend you replace the tension locks with, say, a Rocco closer coupler, because the gap between the two coaches is quite significant when the train is being pulled. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you have, why not check out one of my earlier videos? Or if you'd like something from the Network South East region, click on Richard from Everard Junction. The links are on the screen.